All right. Hi, everybody. This is Chucky, the SE Call-In Show. We've got Will and Nathan here.
What
How's it
up,
going,
yo?
guys?
Hey, hey.
It's been a long goddamn day, is what it has been. This is
Yeah,
like
we had
9 o'clock my time.
little bit of technical difficulty, but I think we've got things worked out. We're trying to do this at 4 o'clock. That's our usual time, so no changes there.
4 o'clock
So
for
this
whom?
is what's that?
4 o'clock for whom?
Four
What
o'clock
time
Eastern
code?
time. Yeah. What I should say is we try to start it on the hour, but a little late today. So yeah, this is the SE Call-In Show. What we try to do is we're here for your questions or comments. If you want to call in and talk about SE, if you want to go through explore a claim, maybe you want to try leading an SE conversation with one of our claims, something like that. We're up for anything like that. But generally, we're just going to talk about SE and listen to what you have to say. So, Nathan, before we started, you were telling us about this thing you're doing across the country or in some other part of the country. What was it about?
Yeah, well, I met up in person with Reed Nicewonder and Mark Solomon, and that was just awesome. And I hit it off with both of them. It was great.
Is this the first time you've met either of them?
In person, yeah.
No.
I think we've been talking. Well, I've been talking with Mark for maybe over a year, and with Reed for I don't even know. I think I started doing streams when the pandemic started and I was in lockdown. I was like, I need a new hobby since I can't go
Back
out
when
in
your hair
public
was
and do
long.
SE. Yeah, right. Yeah. A foregone era. So yeah, I met up with them and we had a great talk. And I'm working on this project for Reed, investigating some stuff Peter Boghossian is putting together, and I don't want to talk too much about it just yet because who knows what's going to come of it. But so I'll wait until things kind of pan out. But we had all this really nice camera equipment set up, and I was on a college campus in Purdue, the college campus, Purdue, and we were all packing up or getting ready to pack up for the end of the day after a day of shooting. And Peter went back to his room and some Mormon missionaries came up, or actually they walked past, and I flagged them down. I told them what SE was about and what I was doing and that I was interested in having a conversation with them. And they said that they had 5 minutes to chat. So I was like, okay, 5 minutes. So it's a real condensed talk. It's very, very short, but it's going to look really
nice. Is it actually 5 minutes, on the button?
I didn't keep track of time very much, but I went straight to what the claim was, how they knew it was true, and straight to disconfirmation, good old fashioned Anthony Magnabosco style, 5 minutes, try to just condense it all. And then
I think you were saying that most of what you've done is an hour or 2 hours. It's the same.
Yeah, I do long form.
Yeah.
Yeah, normally.
Yeah. It's really hard to pick up the pace for me.
Nor do I stand when I do it typically. Yeah, there's a picture. There's a quick preview. I can't wait to share it with you guys. And what's awesome is when it was over, I cut it short just because I got a really clear I don't know from them to one of my questions. And I was just so satisfied with that. I was just like, great, you guys are honest and this went really well. So I ended it. And when I did, Mark was so excited. He ran up to to greet them and be like, hey guys, how's it going? And I'm glad that you stopped by. And we really believe in this dialectic. It's a great way to bridge ideological divides and and understand one another better. And then all of a sudden Mark was doing SE with them. It couldn't help himself. And so he and I were standing shoulder to shoulder while the Mormon elders were standing shoulder to shoulder.
Right.
And it just was so fun. He did kind of repeat an outsider test that I had just asked them a second ago. So that was kind of awkward, but they almost got a second chance to think about it.
Right.
So
that there's two sort of interesting bits there. How was it when you were talking to two people?
How was it when I was? Yeah, It's definitely harder to track the conversation because I'm not sure, like, what I'm trying to do when I practice street epistemology, like, in a layman's way to put it is I'm practicing theory of mind, and I'm trying to put myself into their shoes and see the world through their eyes. And it's really hard.
What that is, that theory of mind? Because like,
sure.
as a concept, people might not have heard of it.
Theory of mind is, and let's see if I might butcher this, but essentially I'm just trying
Sorry to put you on the spot. Sorry.
I'm trying to see how they're seeing things the way they're seeing it. Like, gotcha. If I could have their brain, or if my awareness was in their brain and I had all the memories that they had, therefore, like, I saw all the reasons that they used to come to a conclusion. And that it goes to everything, not just like intellectually, but also emotionally, right? Like, how do I feel about this thing? That to me is theory of mind. Like, I'm putting myself in their shoes and trying to see the world through their eyes. And I'm trying to repeat back and make it clear to them that I'm trying to do that. And then I'm trying to build a bridge between us so that way we can come to a mutual understanding about any given thing. And then I also make it clear that this dialectic can be used for all claims, not even just the claim that they want to bring up, but like anything. And that this is also the way that I would appreciate being spoken to if I had a claim. And I'm trying to model that as best as I can. So yeah, that would be my theory of mind when I was talking to them about it. Yeah.
I have two claims I'd like to make, and I was going to make these claims before I saw the photo. My first claim is that Mark Solomon is taller than he looks on camera, and my second claim is that Reed is definitely shorter than he looks on camera.
I was surprised to find out that I'm about as tall, or maybe a half an inch taller than both of them. Because I always thought I was shorter than them.
Wait, you're half an inch taller than both of them. So Reed is the same height as Mark Solomon?
I think I'm definitely a little bit taller than Mark. I don't know about Reed.
Oh, okay.
I can sense Reed blushing right now. I want to go meet up with him, and just now I need to do the thing and be like, hey, wait a minute.
It's really cool though. I think it's like the fact that this has gone from sort of you guys meeting on Discord and sort of getting into this and falling into the community, and now meeting them and just like going out and doing stuff. And the meetup groups that are going on as well are really encouraging. That
reminds me, I need to promote the Portland meetup. But before we go into all that, should we plug how to call into the show, or that?
Yeah, I think it's good to do a little reset. So we've definitely got people coming in to chat now. So we're doing a call-in show. We are looking for you to call in with your questions or claims. We're happy to engage in SE with you or to answer your questions about SE. Don't worry that it's going to be like 3 against 1. We make sure that 2 people disappear and you're just having a conversation. It's one thing to talk to 2 participants like you did in the photo, Nathan, but it's another thing to talk to 2 practitioners at the same time.
So it is an interesting problem talking to 2 people at once, especially one of the things that seems to happen is that when you're out on the street, as it were, like it's somehow easier to approach 2 people. It feels less predatory in a way. I was speaking to John from Quality Questions, and we were reflecting on this difficulty where but if you go up to somebody with somebody else, of course they're going to be feeling like they should be included or they want to participate, and I really doubt that it's possible to have an as effective conversation with 2 people engaged as it could be for one.
However, if you adopt a mindset of, if they're somehow different, yet they have the same conclusion, but they're using different reasons, it becomes an opportunity. Because what you can do is you can start asking one to ask the other questions. Now they're doing SE with each other, and you can even just step back and like watch it unfold. And I've done that before, and it's great. It actually makes me feel even more. I get like more dopamine release. I'm like, oh yes, now they're doing it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess that could be a good strategy if they have that same view but different reasoning. Yeah.
But anyone who's interested, there is a link at the top of YouTube. It should be pinned to the top of comments, and you can call in. You get put into a queue, So don't worry about interrupting conversation. We'll bring you on when it's natural. But we really want you to call in.
And you don't have to have your camera on either. So
if you want, just audio only. If you really want, you can turn your audio and your video off, and we'll just use telepathy to talk to you. But you have to be good at telepathy. Yeah. So speaking of doing SE with 2 people, I did SE with about 12 people at once a week ago, which went about as well as you can expect. I live in New York City, and there's this thing right around Passover where Orthodox Jews come out in what they call mitzvah tanks, which are these big buses, vans.
Oh, you literally meant tanks.
They call them tanks. That's not my word. That's their word. They call them tanks, and they come out and they basically try to bring lapsed Jews back into the fold. And so they stop people on the street and they say, "Are you Jewish?" And then they try to start a conversation like that. It's fascinating.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've got Sharon. There we go.
So that is absolutely. So I went for a run the other day.
They'll never see them coming with the van.
These aren't stealth vehicles.
Not stealth.
So I went. Yeah, it's amazing. I was out for a run, and I swear it was like 7-year-old kid came up to me, and he was like, "Are you Jewish?" And I was like, "No, are you?" And this kid is like decked out in Orthodox gear, and he's like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Why are you Jewish?" And I think so that I don't exactly know what was going on, but I think these kids are basically being trained. And so there must have been 15 total kids. Once they realized that I was actually trying to have a conversation with one of them, they all came over and like formed this team.
Yeah, epic. All right.
Yeah, and they were like, "What?" This one kid that was like 6 years old, he started repeating all the stuff about Adonai and I don't know the words, but their word for Adam, and telling me about like all of the facts. And I was like, okay, so why is that true? How did you find out that that's true? And they started by just repeating like facts, because they're reciting what they've learned in classes and things. And I said, well, I was running, and just up the street, I talked to a Muslim who was telling me things about Islam. How do I know which one of you is right? And that they stopped a second, and one of them was like, "How do you know when you touch your ear that you're really touching your ear?" And I said, "How do you know that?" But it was very hard to talk to an individual because they keep sort of churning,
cycling through.
Yeah.
Tagging in and out.
Yeah, but they probably ranged in ages from like 6 to 13. There were no like teenagers, like old teenagers. And we talked for probably a good 15 minutes. And it was fantastic. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I've done a couple of like group discussions on Discord, like in Chatterbox and a couple other different discussion groups. And something that I learned, and I'm not like an expert in it by any means, but a great way is like when you hear a question like, "Can I touch my ear?" What was the question exactly? It was like,
this little kid asked me, "How do you know when you touch your ear that you really touched your ear?"
Then I would just say, "That's a really great question. Does anyone here think that you can touch your ear, or does anyone here think that you can't?" And now you've got people looking at it different ways, and then you can ask them to ask each other questions, and you could just step back.
Right. Yeah. Taste
test. Listen to
smell test. Nice. Read as our man behind the curtain.
Our man behind the curtain's just gone mad.
It was really, it was so surprising because the answers that I heard were not the answers I expected. Like having spoken to I guess I've never really spoken to Orthodox Jews before. I've spoken to people who are like Reform and stuff like that. But the two big reasons that I heard, one was that 600,000 Jewish people witnessed God, and then each person told their son, and then each son told their son, and each son told their son, until I got to these kids on the street. And I thought that was a really interesting argument. Yeah. One of the things I asked them was, do you think your father is always right about everything? Yeah. And they were like, well, no. Huh?
That one will strike a chord.
Yeah, it's doubly interesting because I know that Judaism is also matrilinear. I don't know quite the word for that, but you're Jewish because your mother's Jewish, not because your father's Jewish. Yeah. And so I didn't want to get into that. I was just like, has everything your father told you been true?
I think talking to children is always fascinating. I really enjoy talking to kids, mostly because I don't have them. So once I get tired of them, I can leave them with, well, I'll just leave them somewhere. And in any case, I think talking to kids is a really great way of learning to be more doxastically open. We need to being more childlike, right? Because kids are just, they have no filter and they don't really care about perception, and they will just say what they think. And in some, it's really often quite insightful sometimes, which kind of has the worrying conclusion that we've sort of learned to be less insightful as adults, which is not ideal. But I was reflecting earlier about the fact that I saw Reed do an SE conversation in the park. He's got it on his Clips channel somewhere. And
Cordial Curiosity Clips, if you're hungry for more content.
Like, comment, subscribe. The conversation was with like, I think he must have been about sort of 10, 12 or something like that. And,
right, yeah.
He sat down in front of Reed. Oh, he seemed really enthusiastic. He sort of ran up to them. He didn't know what it was, but he wanted to be part of it. And so Reed was checking in with the parents, very well, what he hoped with the parents, or abductors or whatever, and was checking in with them regularly as he could, and as you should, and was making sure that it was okay. And the lad wanted to explore the position that the God of the Christian Bible was true, essentially. Eventually, I mean, once he figured out what Reed was doing, Reed asked him if there was a claim he wanted to explore, and that's the one he proposed. So again, Reed's checking in with the parents. It's like, do I really want to do this? I was kind of vaguely hoping he would do Santa Claus, but in any case, he didn't. They did this, and it was
that might
really
be more harmful, Will.
It may be, but wait, there's no Hippocratic oath. Here we go. Here's the conversation.
I thought this was great.
I'm loving this real-time interactivity thing that's going on here. It was. I thought it was really interesting. It was really interesting for a few reasons. One is full credit to Reed for doing it, because at one point there was a point you could see where Reed had just decided the conversation is going to happen. Right, I've checked in enough now. He's in for it. I'm going to be honest with him. And he actually, I think he even asked the question that you mentioned from there, Chucky, which is like, how do you know that your parents know true things? And to ask a kid that question, I think that's remarkable. The kid was really good. He talked about visiting, I think we thought it might have been the Ark Museum, but he said a sort of religious museum. He'd been to a museum and they'd seen lots of things, which is, pretty good evidence. I've been to a museum and seen things is pretty good evidence, right? And he was talking, he was sort of exploring and thinking about it a bit. And it occurs to me that actually learning to do SE with kids is probably a really useful thing to do.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that not only that is, I think it might require some different tools and different approaches, but I think that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. And it would be great, I think, if schools and sort of kids in general could become more involved in SE.
When I was in high school, I took a class that was in like mediation. It was like how to resolve conflicts, interpersonal conflicts. And wouldn't SE be a great fit for something like that? Like the opposite of the debate team.
This is Reed, and full credit to him, because this is a cross between
the parents.
just mild panic and just fuck it, I'm in. It was just I really appreciated the fact that he went and just, as I say, at some point the barrier came up and it was just like, okay, the kid's here, I'm here, let's do this. And yeah, it was really interesting. It was a very short interaction, but I think it's really worth watching. But yeah, mediation between people that are disagreeing about something, and how to interact, I think absolutely. And like learning to ask the questions rather than just make demands. Learning to acknowledge what is and isn't known, right? Like learning to say, like, I don't actually have a good reason, I just feel that something is true or unfair or something like that. And I think yeah, it'd be great to encourage more people to reflect in that way. And I think having, it's not like religion doesn't start early, so I think why shouldn't critical thinking and rationality?
I think we should continue talking about this, but I just want to take a minute to say we are taking calls. If you want to call in, there's a link at the top of chat. You can call in with a comment, a question, a claim that you'd like to explore. We're happy to do SE Live with you, show you how it works.
Yeah, or even if you're just calling to, I got an email actually and a couple of messages recently from people asking for advice also about how to have conversations with people in their life. And I honestly love talking about that sort of thing. 100%. So if somebody wants to call in and just be like, hey, I have this person in my life and I'm trying to figure out how to ask questions about it, that's a great reason to call in. And how can they call in?
They can call in by clicking the link to the StreamYard that's in chat. It should be pinned to the top of comments.
Okay, great. Can we click that?
This is no good, right? We can't. That's rubbish. We need a little jingle. We need an 0851915.
Yeah,
something like that. I mean, we can't have that. Just click a link somewhere.
I'm all for that.
Well, it looks like we've got a caller.
Hello there.
Hello.
Hi guys. Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me properly?
We can hear you just fine.
Call you Woback?
Yes, that's my nickname on the Street Epistemology Discord. So,
Excellent.
hi guys.
Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you. I have a small question about you. So I'm French. I'm based in France. We had Anthony come in into an street epistemology interview just yesterday. So that was great.
Wait, did Anthony go to France?
No, he was on a Zoom call for us.
Oh, Zoom call. Gotcha.
Yeah, awesome. He was on a Zoom call.
All right.
And I'm part of the French Street Epistemology Association, so I try and practice street epistemology already. One of the discussion points that is really interesting to me, I have friends which are in the skeptic world already and critical thinking. And one of the main arguments I hear about street epistemology that they don't like is that it feels very much like manipulation to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We get this all the time.
And I'd like to I'd like to hear your thoughts on how I'd like to hear your thoughts on how do you address that from a person has already a skeptic mind and is already about critical thinking. When they think this is manipulation, how do you approach them and how do you answer their concern about this?
It's really difficult.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm raising my hand.
Oh, go ahead, Nathan.
Well, my favorite way to respond to that is to put the burden of understanding on myself and just SE it. Just be like, what do you mean by that? What is manipulation to you? What would make it not manipulation? And if you had a claim, how would you want, and somebody was doubting that claim, how would you want them to investigate how you know it? It's as simple as that.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that I think it's a real problem. It's a meaningful problem because the optic of a conversation is going to look very similar to somebody wanting to persuade you. Or like one of the problems that I think you find in SE conversations, and I was talking about this earlier actually, which is that if two people are talking and one person's encouraging the other person to critically think about something, it's going to look like the person encouraging the critical thinking is in opposition to the view that's being explored, right? Because that's the critical component of it, right? If we just fundamentally agreed as human beings, we would normally just say, yeah, I'd nod, I'd agree, or even if I didn't agree with you, but I didn't want to talk to you about it, I'd nod. Right? If I'm having a conversation with you about it, unfortunately, in today's day and age, that's seen as me disagreeing with you, and that's seen as a hostile act and a negative act, right? So there's already that framing, and then you only need to add this sort of additional suspicion that what's your motivation for wanting me to think about this?
Yeah.
It's of course then going to start to look like, well, this person has an agenda and is challenging my view and clearly thinks differently to me. It doesn't take much more of a leap to then say, well, some of these questions are clearly unusual and therefore I'm not familiar with these types of questions, and therefore I can be suspicious of their motives. So all of those components, I think, together totally make it justifiable, in fact, for somebody, especially a skeptical, critical thinker type person, to be skeptical of this inquiry, right? And so I would suggest maybe one of the methods that you could use to address this is basically to try to unpack why the tools are being used, right? I mean, I don't know that there's much more that you can do, and it's kind of along the lines of what Nathan's suggesting, right? You just let's say, okay, well, I want to ask you your confidence, but like the reason I want to ask you your confidence is because oftentimes we're maybe talking past each other about whether or not you're really certain about something, or maybe it's just a view that you currently hold but you're not convinced 100% by. Like so the reason I'm asking this question is to try to ascertain this answer. Similarly, you know, when you're asking a question, to get them to reflect on their rationale, their epistemology, you could say, look, you know, this is interesting to me, and I really genuinely would like to know, like, whether you feel like this is the reason, this is the underlying reason for belief. And I think partly it's rapport building, like making sure that people feel that your motives are honest. But I think trying to explain the steps as you go along might help. But I think, honestly, I think recognizing that the optic is valid is useful as well. Recognizing that they're not necessarily wrong to be suspicious, because almost any other time somebody comes up to you in this context like this, clipboard in hand, smile on face, I want to talk to you about your beliefs. The problem is that that's not really what they want to do. What they want to do is sell you something. Our hidden control.
So we've got a list of things on the screen now.
And okay, may I react to what you just said?
Absolutely.
Sure. Maybe we should bring that back in a second here, Reed. Thank you.
Go ahead. So the problem here for me is mostly that he can definitely know that I'm not trying to manipulate. He's more concerned about the fact that people who would want to manipulate and use those tools would be very efficient, because
that's for
the
sure.
motive. So because that's also something I clarified during. So it was a kind of a convention around critical thinking, and many people were interested in epistemology and street epistemology, and were asking questions, and I was clearly stating that, of course, if you're you have to be in the mindset to be ready to put your own methodology on the table and put it to question by asking the person the way that they think, so that you can reflect on your own and they can reflect on their own way of thinking. And so you have to come honestly to the table, being able to question yourself as well. His point was mainly, so my friend's point, aside of this, is this tool is too dangerous, and if at some point I was using that and thinking about manipulating instead of being honest on that conversation, it would be way too powerful to use.
It sounds like a firearm to me. Like, this is too dangerous for people to have.
Kind of. Yeah. That's probably a good analogy for him.
It's a really interesting perspective. I'm definitely willing to. Like, I just don't see it like that. And I know some people do, but I always think about it in opposition to what is my first question. Like, when
what's
someone,
alternative, maybe? Even.
Exactly.
What
like
is the other alternative?
So his stance on that would probably be, I don't care if there's an alternative or not. I don't want to use a method that can be dangerous.
But I think the point that I'm trying to make is that anytime you interact with another human or choose not to interact, it can be dangerous.
Looking at what's the first tool in the toolbox? It's building rapport. Like what's the first tool in the toolbox of the confidence trickster, right? Building rapport, right? What's the first tool in the Mormon, conviction, strategy for convincing people?
Yeah.
It's the same. And so, the idea that these tools are necessary to build up, a good, a useful, or we find them useful, is exactly the same reason why a lot of people with different agendas will find them useful. And I think it's probably just a good thing to be suspicious of motives, but I would sort of agree that what else is there? If there's a way, is there a way that we can achieve this goal without using those tools? Because I definitely think if there was, or at least raising that suspicion, because I definitely think if there was, this community would absolutely embrace it. But I don't know that that's a solvable problem. I would be definitely interested to hear if you felt that was there was some suggestions.
I'd have to go back and ask him. I think his stance is mostly about teaching critical thinking and education through courses, not and then street epistemology can be one of the tools used as part of the critical thinking global mindset. And what he usually does when he interacts with somebody that has a view that triggers him, is usually to send them probably a playlist of Skepticism 101 from a French university or some kind. But let's see, the non-alternative is maybe a good path for him.
There's sort of two sides to this coin, right? Like everyone doing this needs to think, are they comfortable with what they're doing? And then there's the flip side where if this is being done to you, is it a bad thing? And I feel like in terms of me doing something to somebody else, it only goes back to, I really only have a limited set of ways to interact with human beings. I can argue with them. I can engage in, what I would say collaborative discussion, which I would say SE is collaborative. Or I can fight them, or I can ignore them. I'm not sure what else there is. And it just seems like I'd rather have collaborative discussion than any of the other options.
Yeah, I just really want them to think about what the alternative is. And then I want them to think about, like, if somebody's thinking it's manipulation, to ask questions, right? To unravel an idea so I can see how they're thinking about it. I want to know what the alternative to that is and how they're thinking about what the other options are. And then I want to just be receptive to hearing something, because I have yet to come across something that's better.
Yeah. One thing.
No, but sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no. Sorry. I just noticed something as well, which is one thing you mentioned. You're talking, or the gentleman was talking about street epistemology like it itself is a tool, as opposed to just a collection of other tools that are being used, right? That can certainly be used for other purposes, right? You can use a hammer to build a school, or you can use it to bash somebody on the head, right? Like the hammer, it's not intrinsic to the hammer what its intention is. And one of the things I think that's quite important to street epistemology, and my personal view of street epistemology, is that it's pretty much defined by its objective. And the objective is to encourage another person to reflect on the reasons why they believe what they believe. And I think that and I would certainly say that needs to be done honestly. So I usually pack in the word honestly reflect in there, because there's dishonest reflection for sure, and that's unhelpful. I think that in that essence, right, it would be very difficult to say that street epistemology could be, as in if street epistemology is defined by an objective, right, to get somebody to honestly reflect on why they believe what they believe. I don't think that the person you were talking to could say that in and of itself could be a tool for manipulation or persuasion, right? Because it's just the stated aim. And then I would say that certainly all of the tools within that toolbox that you're using to achieve that aim certainly could be used for alternative purposes. But the moment you've stopped using those tools to pursue that goal, I believe you could be said to have stopped doing street epistemology. Right? And therefore we're in a place where we're actually able to say, no, that's actually not SE, because you've actually used this for manipulation. And the moment you chose to do that, rather than encourage critical reflection, you've stopped performing street epistemology.
And a slight nitpick of words, encourage people to get them to reflect, like this word get. I even feel a little unsettled even when I just hear the word get, almost like we're taking something from them, like we're taking. I much prefer the word encourage. Like, this is consensual. Like, they don't have to talk to me. If they want to talk to me, then great. And if they don't want to talk about it, I'm not going to force them to talk about it necessarily, unless it's like endangering other people or whatever. Though I'm encouraging them. Yeah, and these are some.
Yeah, we've got a couple of good comments in chat. So Roddy's saying that the way that you talk goes a long way, and I think that's true. I think people pick up on, your sincerity just through tone of voice and things like that.
Okay, I'm gonna be the devil's advocate here.
Yeah, please.
Go for it.
If people could genuinely feel your intentions, crooks wouldn't work and wouldn't get money out of people.
Crooks?
Crooks, yeah.
I like that.
So I think as we are doing it in the most honest way possible, because it's the better means that we found to communicate with people, especially when we don't share, or even if we do share the same views as they do, we think it's a great tool because it allowed us to come from a place where we were fighting, arguing, or ignoring, and it gave us this alternative. So on that, I completely agree. But for the twist of words on, if you're doing it with the wrong intention, it becomes non-street epistemology. That would be buying a weapon, saying it's a self-defense weapon, and just because if you used it on somebody not in self-defense, that's okay. That's not a self-defense weapon anymore, or a firearm. Just because it's used not for what it's intended for, unfortunately, doesn't mean that the tool has not that capability. And the way he feels about it is probably as if he was so far handed a screwdriver to me, and today I'm giving it an automated screwdriver, and he feels that it could be too powerful, and I don't know what's the word in English, sorry, to
what is it in French?
Abîmer, to if if you use an automatic screwdriver, if it goes too fast, it can ruin your screw, basically.
Strip.
And instead of being helpful into screwing into the wood, you would have damaged the screw and you can't use it anymore. So that's probably the way he feels about this.
This is a general point about anything, right? Like, I think,
True.
So I'll be the devil's advocate, because I think
devilception.
At some point, we're all representing the devil, and nobody's on the good side.
I've got some devil horns nearby. I can put them on.
I definitely.
Yeah, is there a filter?
I should do that. Okay.
So I think I would go so far as to say that anytime we choose to interact with other people, we have goals, and I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. Like, I think there's this conception that unless you're talking to someone for no reason at all, it's a immoral conversation, and I just don't buy that argument. Like, I talk to people to change their minds. I talk to people to get things. I talk to people to come to agreement. I talk to people for all sorts of reasons. And I don't think there's anything wrong for having a goal.
One thing I've observed is that oftentimes this concern seems to be higher among people who practice SE themselves, almost as if they themselves have seen how powerful it is to use this dialectic to understand and build bridges. And they're kind of like almost like self-conscious that they're doing something because it's so effective. They're like, oh man, I'm like a little worried that I might be doing something wrong. What if I'm wrong in getting them to change their mind? Yeah.
Right.
And that just goes to show how open-minded the community is. Though outside the community, I don't think that there's much of a concern. If anything, there's kind of a hunger outside of this community for de-radicalizing ideological divides of all stripes, right? There's just, at least in America and in Portland, specifically where I'm from, there's just a lot of people that strongly disagree on a great many things, and they're opting to just not talk about it instead. And what they should be doing is talking to each other. And we're trying to empower people with ideas about how we're thinking about the way we're communicating, so that we can resolve differences. So I think it's good to be talking about manipulation, absolutely. And though I think it's probably not that as big of a problem as we think it is. It's mostly like
we've got a disagreement in chat. Kurglow says that they think it is wrong to have goals in a conversation because it assumes certitude. So I think I would argue that assuming that you're right is a problem. The problem isn't the conversation. The problem is assuming you're right.
Can I just make 2 quick points? Because I also at risk of Woback having to take this from all sides in any case. But I just wanted to address just the definitional thing, because I think it's interesting and perhaps important. The example you gave of the gun being used for self-defense or nefarious purposes is interesting. To me, though, street epistemology is analogous to the self-defense. Like, you're using the tool in the service of the goal, right? And the moment you've used that gun for some other reason, you absolutely cannot say you're doing self-defense anymore. You're using this to rob a bank. So that's kind of, I guess, an interesting framing shift for me personally. And the other thing is, I'm reluctant to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. But Pine Creek, Doug, who is often on the show, has an interesting way of addressing this problem, which is to say to the person, look, just assume that this is bad faith. Assume that I'm trying to persuade you. Yeah. Okay, if you really feel that that's the framing, well, why don't we just assume that that's the case? And then let's continue to have this conversation. And then if you feel like you've noticed where I'm doing that, like, let me know, like, tell me where that's happening. I think that's probably an interesting way of addressing it, because otherwise, I don't think you can persuade somebody that you're not trying to persuade somebody, or at least you're going to have to start for sure, right?
No, that's a really interesting thought. Telling him, okay, let me teach it to you, and you can do it on me. We can work it together. And if at some point you feel like you're trying to manipulate instead of being honest about the way people reflect on their thinking, let them know. And therefore they can be aware of it and let you know when they feel they're being manipulated versus when they feel you're being honest and open in the conversation. And that could be a good way of putting that aside for him during that conversation, and then moving on to more open and honest conversations.
And it connects with the definition. It connects with the definition as well, because what you can say is yeah, because honestly, the moment you think I'm trying to persuade you, like, I will have stopped looking to achieve my goal. I'm no longer doing self-defense, right? So it's really important to me that I don't do this. So the moment we wander off this path, I will have failed. And it's really helpful for you to feed back to me. So yeah, I think that's great.
I wonder if Reed has those do's and don'ts handy for us to take a look at too. And then maybe we can move on to another thing here in a minute. Yeah. But the following list of attitudes and behaviors that could shift an SE talk into the realm of manipulation and should be avoided. Yeah. Hiding
your goals. Oh yeah, actually, I was gonna suggest that. But that's,
if you have goals, you can just say them.
I just wanted to react to Chucky about when you said you had goals about changing their mind. I just want to say I do approach SE without the goal in mind about what if they're right or wrong, because
without any goal in mind, or without that goal.
Without. When I try to approach SE or approach, let's say, non-violent communication with people, not especially doing, the formal version of SE, I usually approach it with, let me understand what brought you there.
Right, but not that's your goal.
Good sense. Yeah, I want to. Yeah. My goal is to understand.
Right.
How they achieve their conclusion, not if it's bad or wrong, or if they should change their mind or not. But just understand and maybe reflect and help them reflect on the way they arrive to the conclusion. And
all I'm saying is that
I agree or not.
I'm just making the point that some people will claim that the existence of goals is the problem.
Oh, okay.
And I think that that's way too far. Like, the real problem is lying, right? The real problem is misrepresenting.
So I think one characterization here is the difference between wanting somebody to critically reflect on their reasons why they believe what they believe, and a second one is having a stated or a desired conclusion that you want them to come to, right? So the moment you think that you know where they should end up in this conversation, if they're at position A, you want to get them to position B. you are persuading. You're going to be tempted to use rhetoric and cheap linguistic nonsense and persuasion all day. If that's your goal, then that's what you're going to do. If you honestly have the goal of encouraging the person you're talking to just to start that reflection process, just to think about it for a moment, then I think you're doing street epistemology. But the moment your goal becomes anything other than that, and again, this is why I think it's really useful to define SE in this way. Because by saying this is what I'm attempting to do, I mean, I'm telling you what my goal is. I want you to just reflect on the reasons why you believe what you believe. If you have a secret goal, a hidden secondary goal that you want them to then conclude some particular outcome, then I think you're going to be not doing street epistemology, and you're going to be chasing persuasion. Yeah.
I still am not quite, like, maybe I'm just an asshole. I think that's pretty likely, in fact. But I have no problem with really any goal. The problem is misrepresenting your goal.
Yeah.
And I think it's
or not
okay.
making it clear what you think. If you have a conclusion, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, tricking someone is the problem, right? It's like, I mean, let's pick something concrete here. I think I would rather people believe that vaccines don't cause autism, for example. And I do legitimately want people with that view to change their mind. I can't help it. That's a truth about myself.
So there's a distinction between wanting to have a conversation that persuades somebody to do that, which may be a laudable goal, right? To say that this wouldn't be street epistemology if that's explicitly the objective that you have, right? To say that's not street epistemology is certainly not the same as saying that's not a good conversation to have and you shouldn't do it, right? If you really believe that and you want that person to come to that explicit outcome, then by all means do this. I just think it's useful not to frame that as street epistemology, because that objective is very different from the, I think what we should be doing under the rubric of street epistemology. I also think that, okay.
In any case, for the audience listening, if you are personally concerned by this conundrum, then just say, wow, that's fascinating. I hold the opposite view. Do you mind if I ask questions so I can like help understand where you're coming from, and maybe you can understand where I'm coming from? And by the way, feel free to ask me questions along the way.
Yeah.
You know, just like, it's we kind of tend to overthink this one, I think, a little bit. Let's bring up that list of things back that Reed had. If he's like not gone, he might be gone. But there we go. He also had a flow chart too, which I kind of wish we mentioned, so that way if people were just listening and not watching, they could see, like, there was this really great flow chart on like why do SE. That was a good one too. But let's see here. Being disingenuous in your words or actions. Yeah, don't be disingenuous. Revealing some goals, yet intentionally hiding others. Yeah, we pretty much covered that. Messaging excessively. Ideally, you're not messaging at all, other than maybe, to be clear about what your views are and when you're answering questions, that sort of thing. Leveraging emotions. Oh man.
Yeah, and expressing fake empathy or kindness. It seems like the common trend for all of these is to be genuine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, does that?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, does that answer your question, Wilbeck?
Yeah, it does. It does. I'll have a new way of approaching this with him, and I'll have another conversation around this to hopefully get him to understand what can be achieved through street epistemology that might not be achievable through other means. So that's great. Thank you very much.
Could I ask a real quick question before you leave? Sorry. I'm just intrigued as to the size of the French SE community, because it is a personal anecdotal observation of mine that there aren't that many French practitioners on the SE Discord server specifically, and I wondered if there was a particular reason for that.
So there might be. So we have a few people already on the street epistemology Discord in the French section, but in order to be more efficient in terms of advertising and everything, there was the creation of a French association under French laws.
Gotcha.
To be able to request subventions and be represented. So it was named Opinion sur rue, which means ideas on the streets. And it englobes street epistemology alongside other verbal communication methodologies, just to try and talk better with people, have better dialogue. And street epistemology is the main focus, of course, of the group. So as we created a different entity, there's a separate Discord on which we hold all the administrative discussions that go around that. So
this
hence
explains it.
Yeah, exactly. But unfortunately, we had to. Because we couldn't have all those kind of discussions, it would have polluted the Discord with many non-SC directly related communications and discussions.
That's awesome. I'm really glad I haven't answered that, because it's just a weird observation to notice. And yeah, thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
No worries. Thank you very much. Have
Thanks
a nice
for calling in.
day. Okay.
Take care.
Cheers. Thanks.
And then,
I don't like the column view.
It really wants us
this
to
is
be
awful.
vertical.
Why do I need to go?
it's because it fills all the space.
He does like it to fill the space. That's true. That's
so we've got a couple of questions in chat. So I'd like to encourage y'all to actually call in if you want to talk about these things in depth. For anybody just joining us, there's a link in chat pinned to the top. You can call and talk to us, just like we just had a caller, Woback, and you're welcome to call in with a question or comment or a claim.
Why would someone have to be certain to want someone else to change their mind? That's an interesting question. I don't think it should be a burden. Certainty, philosophically speaking, I don't believe certainty is a position anybody can legitimately hold. They can be very, very convinced and treat something as if they are certain about it. But I don't think certain
about anything.
Exactly. Even my uncertainty.
Even colloquially, just using the word certain, like I'm certain if you feel positive, you don't use that word ever.
I actually try not to even use the word know. I wouldn't say that I know anything. I just have beliefs.
Well, I sometimes say that person doesn't know something that I saw, or that person doesn't know something that about the conversation we had, or something like that's how I'll use the word know.
Yeah.
There's an interesting component of language, which is it tends to drift. And the go-to example I often use here is that the expression soon used to mean, in Old English, it used to mean now, immediately. But people got lazy. So when somebody said that they would do something soon, meaning now, what they really meant was they would do it in sort of 5 minutes. And then eventually that became 15 minutes or 20 minutes or maybe tomorrow, right?
It expands more and more.
And so they made this new word, which is now, right? And now, if you notice, doesn't really mean now anymore either, because you have to sort of say right now if you really mean you're going to do it immediately. And I think that kind of linguistic drift happens with expressions of certainty, right? Because what you're saying by using the word certain or I know or true is you're not really making a philosophical claim. What you're saying is using language to convince somebody else of what your intent is and what you want them to do in response to that. So yeah, I think that's just an interesting thing to notice, because it lends people to say more than they intend because of the need to persuade. And will kills the
tough. It's tough to. I mean, I think the big picture. I think the big thing is that it's quite hard to talk to people. Like, it's hard for me to put ideas into your head. And it's really hard to put the ideas that I want you to get from me into your head.
There's that word "get" again. Sorry.
Well, but I think there is a goal when even if I say, you know, I went to the bank yesterday, or I had a run-in at the bank and I got into an argument or something, and I'm talking to my roommate. Like, there's a reason why I'm saying that. But I'm trying to tell them what I'm dealing with so that they can offer advice or sympathy, or like everything we do has a goal. I don't think there's anything wrong with goals.
But the goal, would you say that that's true of a street epistemology conversation? So to me, I would say that the SE is defined by the goal of encouraging reflection, and that if you have a different goal, then you're not doing SE, in my view.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not convinced. I think that's the, what's the word? That's the sort of crystalline, I can't think of any other word than goal. That's the highest goal possible. But I think our real reasons, the reasons people do things, aren't so simple. It's a mix of all sorts of stuff. There's 5% of this, and there's 10% of that, and there's, I mean, let's be 100% honest. Like, part of the goal is I feel good when I talk to people. Like, there's so many reasons we do the things that we do.
Yeah, maybe motivations is better there, right? Like, there's lots of reasons that motivate you to want to have the conversation, but the objective of the conversation itself feels to me like it necessarily should be reflection. And I think if you're chasing a different goal, so if I'm motivated to have this conversation and not feel like I've succeeded if somebody starts to critically reflect, then I think that's a problem.
We should be just doing reviews of the SE textbook that we're writing, the module, the guide, the SE guide. We're like hundreds of pages into this thing right now, and I'm fairly certain that we've covered in great detail goals. And I would love to just pour over that with you, Will, to see like what it is many of us in the community have worked so hard to write and to make clear. I mean, we're always improving it. So I would love to see, like, if you could like tear it up and help us think about it more, because you've changed my mind about a great many things. Speaking of which, and this is, let me know if this is like if I'm diverting the conversation too much. But I got some new swag. Here. Anthony sent me this new shirt in the mail.
I like the red.
Stoked. Yeah, the red is good. It's a little clashy with my red room, but
it's not clashy. That's on point. You got
too matchy.
Yeah, no, it's
extra
good.
matchy. Definitely, the devil horns would work really good right now in this picture. Yeah.
That's true.
But you made this argument a long time ago, and I just want to put a spotlight on it for a second, because while I might not be seeing the goal thing completely eye to eye with you, though I know what you're saying, and from my point of view, I'm like, okay, you can have that idea. Like, it doesn't affect me at all. The case that you made about changing the SE logo, you made like a whole PowerPoint presentation. Christ. I know, yeah. I'm gonna dig it up. Let's light a match.
I honestly feel it would be easier for me to persuade everybody in the SE community to agree to my definition of what SE is than to get everybody to agree that the logo needs to change.
See, here's the thing. Are you trying to encourage us to adopt that view? Is that your goal? Anyway, right. This here is the logo. This here is the logo.
This is the new logo, right?
This is the logo I designed in response to my criticisms of the existing logo. So I have some issues with the existing logo, and rather than just simply say don't like it, I thought I would try to come up with something that was capturing the spirit of it, and maybe the actual SE logo just disappeared from the left. Did you see that?
Yeah, can we get both of them up at the same time?
I think Reed's working on it. Man behind the curtain is hard at work.
He's got some things up. You know, he's playing the internet like a piano right now. So I had these concerns about the logo, and basically wanted to demonstrate that, you know, we could make something a little bit cleaner, a little bit more.
Where can people see your argument for it if they wanted to look at your PowerPoint?
Probably throw that up. If you guys want to do this, I'm worried.
You don't need to do it right now, but like maybe we'll just like put it in the comments.
Yeah,
later, because it's
maybe that would be
a really strong argument for it, and there's a bit of a sunk cost if we don't want to change. Like, and also like we want to be people who change our minds about all sorts of stuff. Why not the logo? And this logo isn't terrible. It's not bad. It's just like a little weird in my view. Like the question mark, you're right, kind of does like convey confusion. Like we're here to confuse people.
Right.
One thing I do like more about the old logo is how the black lines on the old logo like kind of go through and make the bubble for the question mark on the light bulb, and it doesn't quite do that on yours. If it did that a bit more on yours, then I'd be like, perfect, it's done.
I conceptually, I think the idea behind the original logo is really nice, and I tried to take inspiration. Part of the reason for the lines not making the outline of the bulb in the way that you're suggesting is the issue that I feel like the resulting shape of the light bulb does not read so easily as a light bulb. As in, I didn't recognize it as a light bulb the first few times I'd seen it, and so there's kind of that's kind of why I changed the shape of it. There's a whole bunch of things that are reflected on as result and sort of resulted in this one. And one of the things that was quite interesting was that the SE Street Epistemology Discord server. I swear I jumped into a channel, a conversation one day some months ago, and they were saying, so we're going to change the logo to your logo. And I was really surprised about it, and they did, and actually really surprised that it got almost, I won't say universally positive, but certainly much more positive response than I was expecting, because people tend to not like things that change.
I think if we adopted your logo as a community, I'd put it on more of my stuff. Like
I really appreciate that.
I'd probably, it's more fashionable in my opinion to like walk around with it.
It certainly can be tweaked, and I appreciate you raising that. And if not, slightly surprised that this conversation's come up, but I appreciate it, man.
Just figured it was worth mentioning. But and to move on to something different, unless you guys had somewhere to go, maybe we should just reset the room till people they can call in, then I'll move on to my next thing.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I'm trying to encourage people to call in. I've been talking in chat. So one of the things we haven't done today is have somebody on with a claim. So if you have a belief that you'd like to explore, instead of us just talking about SE, you can see how it works. And then we can.
If you don't feel that you have a claim, can I ask you what your confidence is in that? You see what I did there? So I twisted it around on them. They thought they had it straight, and then I flipped it on them, and now they don't know which way is up.
But yeah, I think it is often hard for people to come up with claims, and it's hard to identify beliefs that you have until you sit down and you start thinking about it. But anything you want to talk about, from politics to bathrooms or trans rights, things like that, or something maybe about religion, or maybe just interpersonal conflicts. Do you think that SE is problematic if you have a goal? These are all claims that we'd be happy to explore.
Yeah, and if no one calls in, maybe we can talk about goals more. We just SE each other. Sure, that would work. And a quick plug. I recently was so inspired by Lisa and her recent contributions to previous call-in shows that we've been doing recently, because she started a group or a community in Salt Lake City, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And I've just been hearing stories about that and how positive that sounds. And that's something I've been kind of lacking here in Portland, is like any kind of like actual in-person community. Discord only satisfies me so much before I'm like, okay, I'm like sitting at my computer all day. I want like real life person interaction. And there's not a lot of people in my area that think very critically about a lot of things. And I've just been like hungry for it. And after seeing, I heard, I think even like Tyrone Wells brought this up a long time ago on his show, that if there isn't a community in your town, start one. Yeah. And when I heard that from him, I was like, yeah, maybe, but I need to think of a few people first to send the initial invite, right? And then I just heard from Lisa, she just started one, like threw it up there, and now she's meeting up once a week, or I think like twice a month or something. And so yeah, reach out to Salt Lake City SE group if you're in that area. Yeah. And
we actually had I think a caller last week when Lisa was on who had their own meetup. So there's things that are happening that even we're not aware of. We were talking about trying to figure out how to link up all of these people.
So we
should probably do it on streetepistemology.com.
I'm gonna say this now because not that it's a useful place to discuss it, but in general, because I think it's worth remembering. Well, I want myself to remember in the future, but you can actually create a group that is that has multiple child groups, essentially. So one meetup group entity that can have multiple child meetups, and they can all be connected in that way. And that's how I used to run my Deviant Robot communities back in the day. As to how easy that is, I honestly, Nathan, you'll be so surprised. You basically it is totally the if you build it, they will come model, and it
that's
totally just happens.
That's what I was about to mention. I just was so inspired by Lisa and her, just like, because she's new to SE, and she was like, screw it, I'm just gonna start it, even though I'm kind of new to this, and like, because it's really not that hard. Like, you can go in the rabbit hole of SE and just it goes deeper and deeper and deeper, but the initial like basic nuts and bolts of SE is something that anyone can learn.
Something that I'm always championing is trying to encourage people to have their first SE conversation, and it doesn't have to be on video. It doesn't have to. You don't have to get a mic. You don't have to get a camera. You just have to tell your roommate or your friend or somebody at work.
Although it does help to record, because then you can listen back and see how well you did. Because we have a different idea, I think, of how well we think we did until we listen to it. But that's my take.
I think recording is a whole thing, right? Like the purpose is to communicate with people better, and you can do that with your mom. You can do that with your sibling. You can do that with your roommate. We had an example a couple of weeks ago, like, whose turn is it to do the dishes? Like, you can do SE about anything.
I think I might.
Before we keep
can I just real quick? I just wanted to. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to just instead, because I think I was misunderstood then. I meant the process of starting an actual meetup community in your area is very easy,
right?
And that actually, once you've started a meetup community in your area, it really will populate. So don't be afraid of just giving it a go and seeing how many people you can basically start the meetup community. You can fly the flag of street epistemology, and you basically, just through the natural algorithm of meetup.com, you will find that participants will start to gather, and then you can announce your first event once you've got a sort of sufficient critical mass. It's very, very easy to do. And do we have
anybody in chat who's tried to set up an event? Let us know. We'll advertise you and can talk about how it went.
I think it would be great to do a conversation with the people that have been running these events, because I think the nature of the events, actually running something like this and having it be active and finding activities for the communities to do, and what patterns work really well, I think would be a really good conversation to have, because I think the more real world communities, the better.
What I've been trying to express is that I started it. I started one in Portland, so I made one. So Street Epistemologists of PDX, I think is what it's called right now.
So you meet at the airport.
Yeah. I don't know what we're probably gonna discuss where we want to meet and like put it to a poll or something. But it already like has 10 people, and several people, 2 of us, or actually 3 of us, including myself, have YouTube channels, so that's awesome. And then several other people are people within my friend circles I haven't met yet somehow. Like one person is 150 friends. Yeah, Street Epistemologist PDX. So I just started one, and we got 10 people now, and I just wanted to mention it here in case there's anybody else in the Portland metro area, or maybe you're in Southern Washington and you don't mind driving a bit. So check that out. Come and join us.
I need to mention something that's quite important and will be relevant to the conversation is an elephant in a pink leotard riding a unicycle, and I think it's really important that we get a visual for that. Just saying. I'm just commenting on Reed's amazing ability to pull up relevant images, and I wanted to push the boundary there a little bit. Challenge.
He always quickly thinking on his feet.
He's on it.
Push the buttons the right way.
There are some AI tools now that'll draw programs for you based on Google Images.
I'm not convinced that Reed isn't an AI tool. Have you seen his Miro charts? It's like.
For all those that attend, this is the last thing I have to say on it. For all those that attend, I'm gonna bring some goodies to give away, some like
that's
t-shirts
awesome.
and stuff.
So that's really interesting.
Some swag. I got some more swag to bring.
That's actually very interesting that you said that, Nathan, because I was looking at the laws about proselytizing in Israel recently. Just happened to be looking at them.
Okay.
And they actually have, many people think that it's against the law to proselytize. I don't never know how to say that word. Proselytize.
I have a hard time with that word.
I think you're getting the L a little bit late.
Yeah, look, I'm from the South. Just give me a pass.
Yeah, we're American, so we're proselytize.
Proselytize. So anyway, a lot of people think that it's illegal to proselytize in Israel, but it's actually not. They do have laws, though, against offering goods in order for people to listen to your beliefs. And so what you're doing would actually be illegal in Israel.
Wow. Well, to listen to my beliefs, what if I just say like, hey, if you show up, I'm going to give you free stuff?
I think anything that's tied to material gain. Yeah. I don't think that's kosher.
I think you're just going to have to cancel your Israeli meetup.
Yeah.
I think I do want to just I do really think it'd be great to hear back from you on that, Nathan, and just like and also definitely feel like it's a very different beast doing these meetups. You know, it's a very different type of thing, and I think like sharing resources on this and like what are good activities and that kind of stuff, I think would be really good within the community. So it would be great maybe on the SE Discord, if there isn't already, maybe create a meetup runners sort of Discord conversation so that people can share tips and tricks.
I've talked with Lisa about that very little, but we're thinking about maybe even having like some sort of forum where all the different group leaders can talk about what works, what doesn't work, what will groups, how can groups benefit from bringing people together in person communities, because that's what I want to be doing now. I think more than even just, I mean, I haven't done one yet. I haven't actually gone, but I love talking about SE, so I could just.
It's a thrill, right? Once you see actual physical real world meet people walking through a door and sitting down and wanting to talk about your people. Thing. Yeah, because back in the day, I used to talk about our online visitors becoming less interesting to us than our meet space visitors, right? And meet space is just such a wonderfully unpleasant, but viscerally and fun way.
Hey, there's Lisa in chat.
I see Lisa in chat. Hey, how you doing?
I don't have the ability to highlight the comments.
Oh, I can do that.
Yeah,
sorry.
I can't either.
Here we go. Whoa, yay, so happy you started a group. Indeed, we need more SE groups, more meet space groups.
So I don't want to be a broken record, but there's a difference, right, between starting a meetup, which I think is super important, and like I'm not discouraging you at all. Everyone should go start a meetup in their town. But right today, you can have a conversation. I think some people fall into the trap of just watching this stuff on YouTube, and they're like, oh, this is a community, but I can't really get involved. Like you can talk to your coworker today. You know, like there's nothing you have to do SE.
I basically just met like 2 or 3 people and I asked them like, if I started a group, would you want to join? And they were like, absolutely, like positively. And I was like, oh, okay, well then let's exchange numbers. And then I had a foundation of like 3 or 4, and it all happened in 24 hours. So
that's awesome. Cool. Yeah, I think it's a good point. Like part of the problem with the visual of street epistemology is always the YouTube videos and Anthony's street conversations and the GoPro strapped to every available limb.
Miss the forest for the trees. It's ultimately about conversation.
It's an understandable sort of optic problem, but because of course the things that you see are the things that are available to see from street epistemology, right? So you're not going to see all the private conversations, you're not going to see the conversations with colleagues and loved ones and things, and I think that as a result this perception certainly persists, and I think the concept of the word street in street epistemology is famously sometimes misconstrued to meaning actually conversations on the street, which is also
office epistemology.
It could be office epistemology, although I think that would give a very different but equally invalid representation.
Dude, can you imagine doing SE in space? Like space?
No, not space. Not space. SE, office.
I know. I'm throwing out another one on top. Like one day when we travel through the stars on our intergalactic time traveling spaceship.
I would be very surprised if something like SE hasn't already happened in space. Like
I'm sure.
We're going to pull this lever, right? What's your confidence that that's the right lever? Like I think they definitely use critical thinking to challenge each other's assumptions all the time in that sort of situation.
Like to give a concrete example, I have a friend who I introduced SE to, and then he goes off and he comes back a couple of weeks later and says he was in a meeting the other day at work. And somebody made a claim, and he recognized that hearing that claim made him have a feeling. This guy's an idiot. And he said, whoa, slow down. And he started asking him, like, are you sure? How sure are you? What gives you confidence? And he realized that the guy had a point. It wasn't the point that he was saying out loud, but he had something to contribute. And that can happen. You don't need a structure to do that.
One of the things that amused me a little bit was to hear Anthony talk about how he used to have conversations with taxi drivers, which is something I used to do constantly. I used to have fairly deep and very personal in many regards conversations with taxi drivers, because you're kind of time boxed in a specific space with a stranger, and like this is an opportunity to have a conversation. It really. I don't know that I'd necessarily recommend this to everybody, but it certainly means that you need to be very careful about how you build rapport, and you need to make sure that there are plenty of, non-controversial or non-confrontational, I should say, exits to the conversation. You should make the driver feel like you don't have to be engaging. But most drivers, in my experience, will recognize that if you're going to be stuck in the car with this stranger for the next 20, 30 minutes or something, this is an opportunity, providing they recognize that you're not drunk or abusive or looking to be offensive or that you can actually have a very frank and honest conversation in that space, because there are literally no stakes. There's no preconception, there's no impact to your wider social groups. This taxi driver is essentially never going to see this person again, and therefore they can be quite frank and honest if you can convince them that your motives are genuine. And I've had fantastic conversations with taxi drivers about religion, family, their reflections on how they should bring their children up, their views on their political situations in their relative countries. It's a great space to have a conversation with another human, and in fact it encourages me to notice this thing, which is almost all conversations with humans can be interesting.
It's so funny that you brought up taxi drivers as an example, because like Uber and Lyft is what I do between other like temp jobs, and like
right.
I take up all sorts of work. I have been working for myself since 2017, and so I've done a lot of rides, and I just chat people up all day long. Or if they don't want to talk, they'd rather be quiet. I'm really respectful about that too, and I just listen to audiobooks all day long.
Can you imagine unknowingly I get in the back of your car? Hey, would you want to have a conversation? Nathan pulls the car over. Fuck it, do it. This is what we're about now.
I usually could do two things at once. I can get to them to where they need to go, and also kind of like just ask them questions and listen and repeat back.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting place to practice.
Certainly. The only thing, though, is that you have to be like walking on eggshells, because you are trapped with this person. Right, exactly. There is no escape. So like I am like more gentle than I normally ever am, and more like inquisitive. And I also let people be wrong more often. I'm just like, oh, okay, that's interesting. That weird thing I just heard. Okay, bye.
That's equally true if you're the one asking the questions and answering them. Yeah,
so we've got plenty of people in chat and not a lot of people talking. So everybody is shy. Don't
because we're on fire today.
I don't think
be afraid. Yeah, it's interesting considering the last few of these. I think there were 500 comments versus today. But if you've been watching and you want to call in with a comment or a claim, please do so. We're happy to talk one-on-one with you.
I blame Lisa. It's because Lisa's not here. That's why.
Yes, insufficient spicy takes.
Yeah.
But this thing about like who do you talk to comes up a lot, and people looking to do these videos on trails or at university campuses and things like that. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, try doing it with your coworkers. Try doing it with your roommates. There's no reason that it has to be a stranger.
Yeah, another observation I've had is that as a contractor working in IT for the last a good long amount of time, 10 years. I found that actually SE in a corporate office space is a really effective way to challenge people's claims about what should be being done or how something is working or what the problem might be. It's a very non-confrontational way of addressing like the problem, but also does this really beautiful job of helping share an understanding as well. It's not just about proving somebody's wrong, but by listening to somebody go through the process of explaining their reasons why they think they should do X instead of Y. Actually, you increase the level of just ambient awareness of the architecture and the business and the ambitions and the motivations. SE in the workplace is really, really effective, and I've used it a few times now, and I'm really a big sort of advocate for people thinking about it.
I've put the link again in chat, Nathan.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think there's all sorts of interesting things to think about in terms of, today we've talked about the ethics of why you're doing these conversations, and then now we're sort of broaching the ethics of who to have these conversations with. Like, is it ethical to talk to somebody trapped in a cab with you?
Yeah.
If they can't escape, are they really willing participants?
You just double down on the consent questions. I think.
100%.
Yeah. You're just like, hey, like, you can't leave the car. You just address the situation. You can't leave while I'm driving. Like, so like, are you sure you want to be talking about that right now? And usually, almost like 90% of the time, hell yeah, I've been dying to talk to somebody about this.
I used to judge my the success of the conversations by how eagerly they wanted to shake my hand at the end of the conversation. And that wasn't me offering my hand for them to shake, but they would sort of turn around and ask to shake my hand at the end of it. And I noticed this was happening very frequently, and I used to start to judge whether or not I'd done a good job by them wanting to, because it's quite cathartic, I think, talking to a stranger. It's sort of the essence of therapy in a way. So there's a lot of benefit to having a very temporary but brutally honest conversation with a stranger without an agenda.
I think it's a great litmus test. Like, there's all this hypothetical worrying about whether you're doing something wrong, but if at the end of the conversation the other person is like, I'm so glad we had that conversation, you're doing something right, Yeah,
100%. So the SE practice on the Discord server starting in 20 minutes. So yeah, we will end this show in about 20 minutes, and the SE practice will kick off immediately on Discord. So do check that out. I did have a weird interaction once. I was in the back of a taxi, sort of doing the same routine as I would normally do, and sort of the gentleman was a little bit quiet, but he was open to the conversation. We were talking, and we got onto the topic of the moral question, and this gentleman was Muslim, and he was talking about he gave me the line that I've heard from many Muslims and many Christians and many other people, which is, without my faith I would be a bad person. And I gave my normal retort to this, which is that, I would be surprised about that. That would surprise me if this was the only reason you're a good person, because you're choosing to believe in this faith position, for example, which is you believe is encouraging you to be a good person. So there's a component of that which would, but I think undermines people's integrity about their own reasons for being a good person or not. And he turned around to me and he said, no, I definitely would be a bad person without my faith. And he said it to me in a way that genuinely made me, and I suddenly became very aware that it was like sort of 2:00 in the morning and very dark, and we were driving through these fields, and it was, and I don't mean this as a reflection of Islam or this, just this particular person. Very unnerving way of responding to it. So yes, I would urge caution a little bit.
Yeah, I just go, why?
Yeah,
no, I mean, it was just the way he responded.
This topic came up when we reviewed the video with Anthony interviewing the former
Mormon,
right? Exactly, and Anthony sort of stopped the conversation. And I think one thing to keep in mind is that, like, I think people often say this as a way to say, that's how fervently I believe, as opposed to saying they really think that they would be a bad person.
Yeah, maybe there's a real reason check we can use to see whether or not there's a real reason that's making them think that their faith is what's keeping them a good person. And I think it's just unraveling their reasons why they think it's making them a good person or better person. And then usually it's like, well, as soon as I adopted faith, I stopped, drinking as much. I stopped fornicating, blah, 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 the typical same old. And then you just say, okay, is there, I'm hearing that, would you, and then you just start asking questions about their reasons for why that they are perceiving it as better. Like, if they're perceiving it as better, why, how are they doing that? And then once they say it out loud, you have their real reasons for why it's better for them.
Yeah,
in their own words.
That's interesting. One of the strategies I've taken in the past is pointing out, and this is a bit of an old chestnut, but you can point out that, you know, there are many things in your religious text, whichever religious text it is, that the text suggests or commands you to do that you clearly choose not to do, right? And so you're not following, you're not observing the Sabbath in the way that it's defined by the Christian Bible. You're not avoiding fish. You're not stoning women to death if they're not a virgin on their wedding night, etc. Whatever the thing is. And
let's not make presumptions.
That's right. I hope you're not. Let's say, and they will say no, and then of course the question is just, you know, well, what if you're not getting the moral intuition not to do those things from the Bible, which you can't be, then you must be getting it from somewhere else, right? So like it's an interesting thing.
You can also kind of use sort of outsider stuff where you say, do you think all people without religion are immoral? And if not, why?
Yeah.
How do they
immoral?
Right. How do they live their lives morally? Yeah.
Yeah. Is there something that somebody with a different religious view could do that they would think was moral in accordance with their religious text, but you would consider to be immoral? That would be interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, these sort of meta things about these conversations about consent, and now this idea that, like, if someone says, if I don't have this belief, you know, I'd go do bad things. These sort of topics come up a lot in the discussion about SE, and I wonder, like, you know, maybe there's sort of a focusing effect. Like, I don't think they really come up a lot in actual individual conversations. You know, like they're interesting to talk about, but I don't think they're like.
When you say actual conversations, you mean outside of street epistemology conversations, or you don't believe they come up a lot in street epistemology conversations?
I don't think they come up a whole lot in street epistemology conversations.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I definitely feel that they come up. Yeah, the moral argument is definitely one of the frequently. I feel like it's a frequently pointed to position of why.
You're saying many people would say, without this religion, I would be immoral.
Yeah, so or words to that effect. Yeah. Or at least they say, I'm a better person because of the moral, because of my.
Oh faith. Yeah. So I'm just talking about, like, when we get into this thing where we're like, whoa, we don't want to do any harm. We have to worry about stopping the interview.
Okay.
Right. I'm talking about this part.
Okay. So are you suggesting, as in being so convincing that they might harm themselves or others if they were to be persuaded?
I don't think a huge percentage of conversations need to stop because of serious concern for the other person's well-being.
No, that is very rare. Although one wouldn't necessarily know whether it was rare enough, right? It is possible that more harm is being done that we're not noticing by pushing people.
Possibly.
Because one of the things that go ahead, Nate.
I've personally struggled with this one before, because I've once, only after having had a talk, after listening back to it, because I record my talks, discovered that there might be something unethical about continuing a conversation with the person when I use the box of truth thought experiment. So, like, somebody told me that they came to their conclusion because their conclusion was like a relationship. And then so let's put that aside for a second. And I asked the box of truth thought experiment to this person, and this person said, and there's 3 questions. And the second question is, if this box of truth that always is right and always reveals the correct answer and gives you all the reasons you need to see to believe that it is or isn't the case, if it can only lower your confidence, but it couldn't raise it, it could only show you the reasons why you're wrong, is there anything you wouldn't want to ask this box? And the answer I got back, I should have slowed down a bit more. The answer I got back was, I wouldn't want to know if my wife is cheating on me. Which made me think, and I didn't catch it when I was in the talk. After the talk, I thought, well, their claim is a relationship, that they have a relationship. They're thinking of their claim as they have a relationship with their conclusion, or with, they think their relationship, there's a relationship, their conclusion. I'm trying to be really abstract and vague on purpose.
It's really hard. I'm not sure whether you're saying the claim and the relationship are analogous, or whether you're saying the claim is a claim about a relationship.
Their methods to knowing their conclusion is true is the same way that they have relationships with people. I'm trying
so like the relationship is their evidence.
No, I think I understand.
Is their method for knowing?
It's like you're saying you treat a truth claim in the same way you might treat a relationship with a friend, as in you relate to it in the same way.
No, it's more like, okay, so it's like a God belief, and they said that their method to knowing is a relationship. And they have a relationship that I was asking them how they knew their claim was true, and they said it's kind of weird. It's like asking you how you know a person you know.
Yeah, some people describe their relationship with God as a relationship. As a relationship, absolutely. Right. I've definitely heard that.
And then when I asked the box of truth thought experiment, what is there something you wouldn't want to find out about? And there's actually an answer there. And that answer is they wouldn't want to know if their wife was cheating on them.
Right. About a relationship.
Or that there was somebody, being unfaithful in some way, or being untruthful with them, and they'd rather remain ignorant of that thing. That would make me want to slow down and maybe even stop the talk altogether, or make it instead about, why they wouldn't want to know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand that. It might be, it's been a long day, so maybe I'm just losing it, Nathan. So apologies, but yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think this obviously comes up. I just don't think it comes up all that frequently. Like most of the time, there aren't these serious concerns about causing harm.
Well, again, I think
we've got a question from chat from Gina. What do you think about the ethics of doing SE with people with mental illnesses? I love this question.
Yeah.
I'll answer personally. I personally feel like not talking to people with mental illness is itself harmful. And so any sort of idea that we have to conclude, oh, well, it's unethical to talk to people with mental illness, I think is the wrong conclusion. So that's where I start from. How about you two?
Yeah, I would agree that on the basis that all that you know is that they have a mental illness is not, I don't think, sufficient reason to say no. But I think there's a degrees, right? There's a severity and nature of that mental illness. There could be people with a mental illness that's specifically going to make the conversation unhelpful or potentially even disturbing for the person. And if that severity of that illness is such that, I think it should give you pause. But mental illness is such a broad category of things. And so, I don't think it should be purely on the basis of just the loose definition of a mental illness. I don't think that should be sufficient to say we can't have the conversation, providing the person can meaningfully consent to the conversation and you think is sensible enough to be able to have the conversation in a meaningful way, and I do mean meaningful, then I would say then there's nothing else that you need to worry about necessarily.
Yeah, I'm really curious to know what Mark would think. He's like the resident PhD neuropsychologist in the community. I definitely have limits to what I think I can tolerate. And so I would just have to consider, myself, do I feel like I can tolerate a discussion with this person? And it's almost always yes. Rarely is it ever no. And sometimes I may presume someone has a mental illness, but I could be wrong about that. I don't really know. And I took some psych classes in college, but that's about the extent of it. So I'm not sure. I do hear what Chucky's saying though, and I would err on the side of go for it, though I would definitely be more cautious, and I probably wouldn't be so keen on like recording or publishing, right? Like my attitudes about those sorts of things would definitely change.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a very complicated question, but I feel like it's related to the question of how do we know that the things we do with other people is consensual? And I think that question is hard even with people who don't have mental illnesses.
That is really, because like, how do you know you are actually, can we doubt the answer we get when we're asking for consent?
Yeah, someone might not have a mental illness, but they might have an individual reason to try to be agreeable or something like that. Yeah.
Love those answers. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Gina.
Yeah, it definitely gets me thinking. Though, by and large, most people, like almost everyone's got some sort of psychological something, like whether that's OCD or ADHD or whatever.
It's the famous Anna Karenina, if to paraphrase, right? There's so many more ways to be messed up than it is to be right, to be good.
Life is hard, man. Messes us up. I'm sure somebody in the chat said depression, anxiety.
Right,
been there, done that,
absolutely,
for sure, right? And it's all about giving yourself and the other person space and time and being their friend.
I think I am, again, pushing back against this idea. I'm really worried about these things where we try to police other people. And I think there's a lot of this, it's almost parentalism or something like that, where you're like, oh, I'm so worried about what this might happen, what this might do to you. But I think if you have good reason to think that they can communicate that they are being hurt or that they are uncomfortable or that they want to stop, I think that's where you kind of have to leave it. Otherwise, you're presuming to know what they know.
Yeah. Absolutely right.
Yeah, I think do no harm and act in good faith. I mean, like at the end of the day, you can't, you have to make a judgment call, and you can always be wrong about that judgment call, but providing you didn't knowingly make a bad judgment call, you can't really blame yourself too badly, right? You benefit of hindsight, maybe you may do things you regret, but if at the time, given the available information, and also you can make mistakes as well. That's the other thing.
You also ask
how
yourself
many
a
people
question.
have run? Sorry.
I was just going to say, you also ask yourself a question like, do I have good intent? Right?
Yeah.
And then really question yourself, do I have good intent? What are my intentions? Like, and then focus on that for a minute, and then you can go in and make your decision after that.
Yeah.
What are you going to say, Chucky?
I was going to say, mental illness is a side point. How many times have you had discussions with somebody where you thought, maybe I should stop what I'm doing? Like I had an ex, and we were having a conversation, and I picked up on the fact that maybe she was upset about something, and I said, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" And she started crying, and she said, "Yes, everything's fine." And it's like, you have to make the decision. Should I listen to what she's saying, or should I listen to what she's communicating? And these are all judgment calls. There's no equation to figure these things out for you.
Yeah, empathy, necessarily intuition. It's we're coming up to the
we are like 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I think it's maybe a good time to wrap up, and maybe anybody that wants to do so, head over to the SE show. Oh, what? We've got a last minute caller.
Doug wants the last word as usual.
This is what happens when we don't have call screening. This is exactly what happened. I've told them we need to firewall.
Now we can't go off because I need to hear all of the wisdom of not being too gentle.
Well, oh yeah. Tough love.
Yeah, give me some.
But I just came on to compliment Chucky on his last week's. Do I say performance? with Daniel Ray? That's the wrong word,
thanks,
right?
Thanks, Doug. Yeah. It was just a conversation.
No, it wasn't just a
really
conversation.
Well. Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
Wow, Chuck appears suddenly. It's a deep Pokemon cut.
It frustrated me so much. Yeah.
I
You weren't frustrated?
I wanted another 2 hours with him. I was frustrated by the time limit. We had agreed before we started to spend 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes on a caller. And so I was frustrated by that time limit. Yeah.
But when someone doesn't entertain hypotheticals, you're kind of stuck, right?
It's tricky. Yeah. I've been thinking about that all week. Like, how do you talk to somebody? How do you entertain the belief that you could be wrong without entertaining hypotheticals?
Right.
Yeah.
It seems
or confidence levels.
Or maybe I'll grant confidence levels, but without hypotheticals, it's really tricky.
There's my series of
them.
Yeah.
It's almost like I don't even know how to have a conversation without hypotheticals, honestly.
Yeah, there was a moment in there where I think he was complaining about the hypotheticals, and there was like one sentence buffer, and then he said, "Okay, hypothetically."
No,
but
I think that's not quite what happened, but yeah.
But I do empathize, because it's such a useful tool in the toolkit, and to have it sort of removed, and it's, I'm sure Daniel Ray will consider it to be a dishonest tool, or used dishonestly.
I don't know how we can wonder about things,
right,
if we can't think hypothetically or challenge each other hypothetically. I'm not saying that he necessarily wasn't. Well, maybe he straight up wasn't. Maybe I need to listen to it again.
Well, I tell you, I have this.
Entertain them with me.
My father has the same problem, and when we had to try to have conversations, he says, "Why are you always saying these crazy things, these hypothetical things? Can't we talk about the world?" And if to charitably say where I think maybe they're both coming from is, they think that they're being tricked,
yeah,
and that hypotheticals are tools to get you to doubt. And I think that there's some truth to that.
Well, it's the fear of being guided, right? It's like,
yeah,
I want to lead the conversation into this certain area of your brain. And that's another thing. He kept on talking about, you're just examining my psychology, not the truth of it. Yes, that's exactly right. We're trying, let me into your brain but the fear is just so high.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. I don't know. Somebody told me once that in order to entertain an idea, you kind of have to both believe it and not believe it. You have to sort of sit with it. What would I be if I believed this to be true? What would I be if I believed this to be false? I think all of that is a hypothetical sort of experience. Yeah.
Daniel, if you ever listen to this, just become a presuppositional apologist. You're almost there anyhow.
I was literally about to say it's a lot easier if you're a presup. That was really creepy. Yes, I think it is a lot easier if you're a
presuppositional. We're simpatico.
We've got a commenter saying his stepfather has issues with these hypotheticals. Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough with family in particular, because at some point there is this feeling of, you're trying to trick me, and it's really hard to recover from that.
This relates to the conversation we had earlier, which is, once somebody's decided that your motives are, but I invoked your name, Doug, I gave your example of just ripping that Band-Aid off and saying, just let's assume that I'm trying to dissuade you. I'm being persuasive. I'm tricking you.
Yeah, we did invoke that earlier today.
Well, you did?
Yeah. We talked about that.
I like it. It's good, and I think it was a useful answer to the interesting question, which is, what do you do when somebody's assuming bad motives, essentially?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. You can just say, let's just do that and crack on and see how far we get. But
I'm so good at avoiding it, I don't feel like I need to. But if I ever felt like somebody was like saying that about me, I would adopt that strategy and just say, okay, then now assume I have bad intent. If that's what somebody's already concluding, I can just go with it. Though
I think
I'm
what's
pretty
fantastic,
good at avoiding that.
What's great about that strategy is it gives them an opportunity to say, I'm not really interested in having that conversation. And so you can make sure that you're maintaining consent.
I think the optics of an I think the problem with the hypothetical is they're not very common in normal natural language discourse, right? People don't tend to, I'm going to go to the shops. Okay, what are you going to get? I'm going to get something from the, get me more beer, whatever. Like you have sort of normal conversations. The idea that you're introducing a hypothetical, I think, places the conversation into a space that some people are just not familiar with, and therefore I think it feels tricksy. I think it can have the nature of something.
That's what wondering is all about. Though,
yeah,
I agree. I very much agree. Yeah,
invoking wonder is like really key. I think in SE, we're wondering about stuff.
I think if all you do all day is go to the shops and buy your cereals and groceries, maybe you don't need to invoke hypotheticals. But yeah, like as soon as you start to think, what is space, right? Or like anything.
But there's a difference between self-reflection, which I think you necessarily, in order to reflect at all, or in order to think at all, you're essentially entertaining hypotheticals, right? You have to construct ideas about the world that might or might not be true, and so I think that's a very internal thing. But what I'm specifically referencing is drawing that into language, right? Using a hypothetical feels unnatural to some people. I think.
I don't know. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I agree. But there's something really interesting about it, and you often find this thing where people go, "That's crazy. That's science. That's philosophy." But if you do like, well, if your aunt thinks that, then wouldn't she have said blah? I think people are actually quite good at that kind of hypothetical, and they go, "Oh yeah, she would have said that."
I know, but that's a very different sort of flavor of saying, okay, imagine we were to be spacemen looking at the Earth on you hear the difference, right? It's
sneaky little hobbitses.
Reed is just on point today.
Yeah, he's a great man behind the curtain.
Oh, I didn't get my elephant with
he's behind the curtain.
The scenes,
yeah, he's hiding
pulling
away.
The levers.
He refuses to come on because of his lo-fi camera. That's what he's doing.
Oh, well, his standards are high.
He's on the road.
Here's an idea. Maybe we should get rid of the word hypothetical and just say hypothesis. Maybe just
they're very different things.
Hypothesis is also
trading out one word.
No. You can have a hypothesis that's in the future. Like I have a hypothesis that if we do this, this, and this, then
that's
this,
a great
this will
suggestion.
happen.
That's a great suggestion, actually. I think that
because
if someone, I hardly ever get pushed back on entertaining hypotheticals. Like it's 0.01% for me.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had it.
Because I talk to people in real life, not on the internet most of the time. Although that might change doing this call-in show. But in real life, yeah, people don't have a problem giving me a scale number or entertaining hypotheticals. Like people just roll with it.
In my experience on the internet, it's more than 50%, but they're okay with hypotheticals as long as it doesn't make them look inconsistent.
Right.
Yeah. But as soon as it makes them look inconsistent, like I believe this because of this reason, but I wouldn't believe this for the exact same reason, then the hypothetical is like a terrible one.
This is such a great point. People are smart enough to know that if they agree, that they see why you're asking the question. And they know that if they go, oh yeah, that's totally, they know that they're inconsistent and they hate that.
Right.
Is this also potentially a selection bias with your audience though? I mean, they've seen you do this trick before. They've seen it land and so like, no, we're not going to have any of this tricksy mind magic of yours, Doug. None of this.
But they still come.
You can always follow it.
But they don't want any of your hypothetical.
You can always just follow it by asking, was that a fair question or is that a fair hypothetical? And if not, then get the reasons for why it's not. And then you have to talk about that. And usually it goes into an outsider test where you can just say, well, if I didn't wonder about your belief and I didn't buy into it and I haven't accepted it, how else am I supposed to entertain the idea? Like, how in the world can I wonder about your idea without entertaining the hypothetical that it might be true?
Perfect. Yeah. Tactical indignation. I like it. That's good.
We have a comment from chat, and I think echoing what you're saying, Nathan, is it even worth having a conversation with someone who's not open to being wrong?
Right. Well,
if you can't entertain that possibility, why even have the conversation to begin with?
My favorite questions are defeasibility questions. And then if there is no defeasibility criteria, make an outsider test for defeasibility. If someone else didn't know what it would take to change their mind, what would you think about that?
To be charitable, though, there might be a difference between entertaining something as possible, but also not wanting to entertain a hypothetical, which is a sort of thought experiment that you're creating for the moment, right? And that might feel different to saying, okay, I could acknowledge I could be possibly wrong in this space, or this is possibly true and this is possibly not true, but I'm not necessarily willing to have a, okay, imagine there were three men and one of them was wearing a mustache. You don't, maybe that's not quite the same as acknowledging the possibility that you're wrong. Again, slightly devil's advocate here, but yeah.
Maybe.
I think it'd be great to, we should be pinging Pine Creek next time we go live. Just let them know that we're doing it. Because,
I didn't know.
Came in like 2 hours into the.
Every day, every Saturday at 4 o'clock.
It's good to have you here.
Is there not a Pine Creek logo we can cast on the nighttime shadows? I thought that's what we.
Like the bat
cloud
signal?
that goes past. Yeah. I thought that's what we did.
But getting back to the Daniel Ray conversation you had, Chucky, like not just the hypotheticals, not the confidence levels, but the biggest problem is just like there's just so much useless talking. I really, how do you?
I don't know there's anything you can do about that. I mean, other than just say, hey, I want to reel it in and talk about this specific thing. They'll usually go with you.
Because he was preaching to you for half of it.
And plugging his site and associated,
Yeah, I think, and we talked about this a bit after the conversation, but when you're having a conversation with someone, and I know the word that you like to use is bloviate. I think it is a perfect word.
Good word.
I don't necessarily want to say that Daniel was bloviating, but certainly people get really excited about what they're talking about. How about charitably, let's say that. And then I think it should be okay to go, hold on a second, because I'm still back here at this other thing. Can we go back to that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And we ask open-ended questions on purpose to encourage people to elaborate at length. Right. So we can like listen to a bunch of different things.
Okay, so I put the blame on Chucky then.
So one thing I'll
take all the blame for everything. I'll be Essie's whipping boy.
I laughed awkward at a strange moment earlier just then because I made the mistake of reading Pine Creek's Paratheticals. But in any case, I do wonder, and this is an interesting topic. Maybe it's good to say for another day.
Bloviation alert.
That sounds uncomfortable. I don't know if I want to be around that. Is SE effective for people who are who make a career out of, either apologists at all?
Whoa, you've got a bloviation alert banner.
I literally asked one question. That seemed presumptive. I feel judged.
No, it wasn't for you. I was just showing you how to do it. That's the overlay.
Well, what would you just say? Oh yeah, whose career?
Not just career, but like who's professionally invested. For an academic, for example, or somebody who's professionally invested in a particular topic.
It's hard to have a real conversation with someone who is financially invested in the outcome of the answer,
or reliant on a particular outcome. And maybe I've have made that mistake in the past by not asking about that. That might be something worth covering. Like, here's some questions like, would a conversation like this interfere with your financial situation? How much of your belief is predicated? I can come up with lists of questions.
That's not the case for Daniel, though, is it?
I don't know. He works in a church doing I mean, he works basically as a staff.
I don't know how reliant, but it's definitely like somehow tied in financially.
Like if Street Epistemology died tomorrow, I mean, that would be bad for his business. He needs us.
If you're talking about his stance that SE is bad, but talking about his stance about Christianity, I think his title is staff apologist.
I know, but just look at his videos. Without SE, he has no content.
Yeah, I don't want to pick on Daniel, but actually I can't.
Especially because he's not here.
There you go, Reed.
Yeah. I can't ask you, Doug.
He's here. Just invite him in. He'll come in.
You talk to people all the time who, they are preachers or they are people who run channels. How often do you feel you actually have a real conversation with somebody who has a vested interest?
See, I don't seek out people who have particular beliefs.
Right.
Sometimes people with particular beliefs seek me out. I just go out in public and I have a sign and it says, "What do you believe and why?" And I'm willing to talk to anyone about anything.
Yeah.
And I think that sets the right precedent that I'm not here to.
Probably never going to get a preacher coming in.
I mean, I might, if I see somebody with a sign, I would definitely seek that person out because that person is advocating.
Yeah.
And I want to help understand what motivates them to do that.
To answer your question, Chucky, I'd say 10 to 20% would be a real honest conversation with a pastor, preacher, apologist. It does happen, but it's rare. But the thing is, I say enough stuff and I beat up on enough people that once in a while a preacher will say, Doug's right there. Calvinism is horrible. I'm an ally with Pine Creek here, or an ally with, so they don't know what to do with me, kind of. So they kind of give me a little more credit when they see me agreeing with them. That's another strategy. Like, it's find areas of commonality and not just rapport. I'm talking about on the issue.
Right. Yeah.
Reed
to pop the stack back to William's original question, like, I think it is worth trying to have these conversations because I think they can be fruitful. They may not likely be fruitful, but I think they can be.
Yeah, I think in the context of the goal of the conversation being to initiate reflection on a particular point. I mean, I think one of the principles of SE is that a lot of people are going around with ideas that they've never really internally tried to justify. That, sometimes we've seen videos where people just merely trying to externalize it, put it into words, have suddenly felt that they've realized they don't actually know what they're really saying, and now they're thinking about it. They're not sure how to even express it. Videos, one of my favorites, one of the big ones from Reed, asks Tina, was it Tina? I think it's Tina, right? The question, is faith a reliable reason? And she's just completely flummoxed for the rest of the video. So it doesn't take a lot oftentimes. And I think SE is very effective, not in pressing an agenda necessarily, but in encouraging just everyday people to just not just be running on automatic on these things and actually take a moment to think about them. But when you're talking about an apologist or a professional or an academic, it would be a bit foolish to assume that they've not reflected on that thing that their entire career is built on. Now, that's not always a safe assumption. I can see Pine Creek smiling there. And I think that's not always a definite safe assumption, but I think they're certainly going to be internally convinced that they've reflected on it enough. And I think that the sort of low hanging fruit almost of trying to just use gentle questioning and polite rapport building is just not going to get to the heart of where you need to challenge their views, if indeed you do. I wonder whether SE would be the right tool to crack that particular nut.
Are you saying in those cases my technique is thumbs up?
I'm not going to comment. Look, there are different tools, right? For depending on what your objectives are and depending on who you're addressing. And so, there are a wide range of options, and yours is certainly one of them. And I don't think it's in any way a bad one, but I think in some cases, for the majority of cases, for what SE is trying to do, which is encouraging just general people to start thinking more critically about what they believe, I think SE is really well tuned for that, and I think it's great because of it. But there are different levels of things to address, and different tools needed.
One quick thing, and we should probably be wrapping it up soon. We're almost at the 2-hour mark. But one highlight of a trip I went on recently, Doug, was sitting next to Reed on the plane with Peter Boghossian behind me, while Reed and I synced our headphones together and watched one of your live streams together.
Oh, wow.
While we were on the plane. It was great. I mean, pause it.
Commercial or private plane?
Chit chat. Oh,
it's
SE1, only the finest. Only the finest for us. Absolute private plane. Yeah.
So let me get this straight. You're on a private plane with Peter Boghossian behind you, watching Pine Creek.
With a champagne in my hand.
Was it a plane or was it a yacht?
It was a yacht plane, actually.
Well, Reed says it was commercial. Okay.
It was commercial, yeah. We were in the back almost every flight. But
which video were you watching?
I think the most recent one. Oh man, now you're putting me on the spot, and I have to remember what I remember hearing when I was jet lagged.
That's right. Don't worry about it.
This is where we find out. Oh no, wait, hang on. It was Toy Story. Now I remember.
I make so many videos I don't remember my own. Anyhow, I'll let you guys wrap it up. Nice.
Yeah, maybe I'll call in to your show one day. I don't know what the hell I'd talk about, but I should probably call into your show just for fun. See how that goes.
I typically prefer theists because they're more interesting.
Definitely more interesting. I'm boring. I'm super boring.
Yeah, atheists are boring. Hey, take care, guys.
All right, see you.
Take care, Doug.
Awesome.
All right, yeah. So I think this is probably a good place to stop. So thanks for joining me, everybody. We try to do this every weekend at the same time.
Saturday at 1 p.m. Pacific time.
1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, et cetera, et cetera.
It's like 9 a.m. in UK time.
Yeah,
9 a.m., 9 p.m.
9 p.m. Yeah.
If you're in Portland, join the Portland SE group.
Right, and if you want to do Discord practice, you can join. They've already started, but there are people all the time, pretty much on Discord, who want to practice SE. So join and talk to them. So see y'all next week, I guess.
Absolutely, cool. It's great chatting with you guys. That was awesome to talk. I'm really happy with the way that turned out. Until next time.
Bye bye.